Welcome back to our Autoline Live webcast from the floor of the Washington D.C. Auto Show, and joining me right now is Larry Kavanagh, the president of the Steel Market Development Institute. Used to be known as the American Iron and Steel Institute, but you've got a new name now.
Well, it's a part.
A part of it?
American Iron and Steel Institute's still there, and we're just a part of AISI that deals with market-related activities. The Institute's very healthy, been around 150 years and be around another 150.
Yeah, steel's been pretty proactive in trying to figure out, how to come up with new grades of steel that allow automakers to meet the safety standards without adding as much weight as they did in the past. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, it's been an exciting time in the steel industry, and steel technology is very analogous to computing technology, communications technology. Take your iPad, right? It's powerful, it's flexible, and in 2 years, there'll be a better model out. That's how it is with steel. Steel's powerful, it's strong. Today's steels are stronger than they were before. Flexible, used in so many applications, even within automotive, and in 2 years there'll be even better steels, and that's been one of our drivers, is to continually work to improve the strength, the formability, the overall performance of our material.
I was astonished to learn. I knew there were different types of steel, and that's what everybody should realize, is there's many different types. In fact, there's maybe several hundred different grades of steel that automakers can choose from?
Well, it's almost a limitless variety, because the materials that we develop today are developed and engineered to very specific applications. So even within a certain chemistry, there's different dimensions, there's different formabilities, mechanical properties, etc. So it's very much an engineered product to an open palette for the designer.
We've seen automakers go to this new manufacturing techniques too, hot stamping, where you heat up the steel to where it's literally glowing red hot, and then stamp it into a car panel.
Right. Well, one of the keys that the new properties of our material that kind of come out every few years lend themselves to newer and newer design techniques. They enable other ways to put cars together, and that's where things like weight savings and improved crash energy management come out.
So what's some of the new things that we should be on the lookout for in the next couple of years? You said there might be new types of steel coming.
I can tell you about an interesting project we have going on now. It's called Future Steel Vehicle, and what it's focused on is automotive requirements in 2020, particularly for alternative fuel vehicles, batteries, fuel cells, etc. And it's looking at the steels that may be available in 2020 and the new design techniques they will enable. And that information is going to be, the first phase of that announcement is going to be in May of this year at our Great Designs in Steel conference in Detroit. And it's very exciting, the new opportunities for new designs that will come from our industry that will allow us to meet future regulations, although there's some challenges there that certainly we can talk about later.
We've got some questions from the chat room. Let's take a few of them. Yeah. Michael Coates wants to know, how much can high-strength steel contribute to weight reduction? Is it enough to keep in the game versus aluminum, magnesium, and carbon fiber?
Wow, that's a great question. The answer to that is yes, given the right regulatory structure, and let me explain that. Steel is the lowest emitting vehicle of all the automotive body materials.
What do you mean the lowest emitting?
So to produce a ton of steel emits much less CO2 than producing similar amount of aluminum or magnesium when you make it. The emissions that occur when you make it.
Just the amount of energy and everything that goes into making it?
That goes into steel making versus making, for example, aluminum and magnesium. So our material has very low emissions. So that's why, the cars today are 63% steel. It's one of the reasons that today's regulations don't consider the emissions that happen when you make the materials, only the emissions out of the tailpipe when you drive the car.
Right, you're saying you have to look at the total life cycle.
Exactly.
Making it, using it, recycling it.
Exactly. So what happens now, if future regulations only focus on when you drive the car, that could actually incentivize auto designers to use alternative materials to make the car lighter, when in fact they'll increase the total emissions of the vehicle because of the amount of emissions that occur when you're making the material in the first place. So as long as we're working very hard to introduce life cycle principles into regulations for future periods. But to the engineering part of that, we're going to continue, I think, as we've already talked about, to develop new steels, and with the new steels that are available now and coming available, we're still going to be able to make improvements in lightweighting that will enable the biggest change in weight reduction we can get from steel, while having the proper regulatory scheme in place to make sure that we're making the lowest emitting vehicles, which is different than the lightest vehicles.
Right.
That should be where the target is.
Good point. Legislative Geek has got a great question here.
Okay.
He says, recently Berkeley Lab and Caltech developed a glass that contains palladium, has a high bulk to shear ratio, and is said to be as strong as steel. Is the steel industry seeing competition from non-traditional steel or replacement composites?
I think I think we will, and certainly it's the intent of materials developers in non-traditional materials to look for niches where those materials apply. But when you look at, you have to optimize performance and cost and environmental impact, and some of these boutique materials have high environmental impact and high costs. It's going to be tough for them to be significant at the present pricing structure and environmental impact. But there's certainly going to be challenges.
It's always a horse race, isn't it?
We have a long track record of kind of reinventing our material in the face of this type of competition. This type of competition is good. It makes us better. So,
and I think it's important to point out that you can still get weight reduction with steel, with these new steels that are coming.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. That is not exhausted at all. I mean, we continue to have weight reduction. We continue to have, and will for the foreseeable future. I mean, it's opportunities there from today's model vehicles, at least 15% more to be gained with the steels we have today. It's because they're not the optimization techniques that have been developed are not fully ingrained in automotive designs today. So there's a lot more to go, and that's with today's steels. Then you get the next generation of steels, you get more lightweighting.
But don't you also, as an automaker, have to start from the get-go looking at it holistically? I mean, there's design and manufacturing techniques that have got to be considered to be able to use these new steels.
That's right. That's right. It's part of the process, and that's why when we undertake a big international project called like Future Steel Vehicle that I explained before, it looks at the materials and the design methodologies and the targets you're designing for, and considers all of those components: cost, performance, and environment. So yes, the answer is yes there.
Real good. Well, Larry Kavanagh, thanks so much for stopping by and talking to us all about what's going on in the Steel Market Development Institute.
Automotive Market. Thanks, John. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks much.
Take care.
AutoLine Live from the Washington, D.C. Auto Show is brought to you by our Inner Circle sponsor, Bosch, invented for life, and also by Dow Automotive Systems, innovations for clean powertrain solutions, and by the Steel Market Development Institute, automotive steel technologies powered by strength, fueled by innovation.